Welcome to Module 2 of the NetWaste Tool video tutorials. This is the second of 4 modules. Together these modules demonstrate how to use the NetWaste tool from registration through to final reporting. Module 1 explains how to register as a user and set up a new project. This module explains how to input components into the tool. I will demonstrate using an example project. Module 3 explains how to analyse a NetWaste tool project, and Module 4 explains adding guest users, generating reports, and editing project details. In this module we will cover how to edit your project specification by selecting from a list of components, how to edit multiple components to match your specification more closely, how to add Site 1 materials to a component, how to edit individual components online, and some tips for interpreting a bill of quantities and ensuring your project is accurate. If you wish, you can start using the tool while listening to this video. A workbook has been developed to help you do this. The workbook is available on the RAP website. You can print the workbook and follow along. I will indicate where you should pause this tutorial and refer to the workbook with this symbol. This module starts where Module 1 left off. You should view Module 1 if you want to understand how to access the tool and begin setting up a new project. You will remember the project homepage from Module 1. This is where you can access all the functions needed to analyse your project. The first step in analysing your project is to tell the tool what materials and quantities your project includes. We do this via the Add and Edit Components option at the top of the screen. The Add and Edit Components screen contains a number of tabs, each representing a building element. This is similar to the way a bill of quantities is set out. We're currently in the Substructure tab. External works elements can also be shown and edited by selecting the option under Elements. For each component, the unit and rate are shown in the grid. You can choose to display additional information in the grid, including recycled content, wastage rates, and component rates. Tick these boxes and the table will update to show more information. The idea is to match your selection of components to the project specification in the bill of quantities as closely as is reasonably possible. You will want to consider how accurate your analysis needs to be given the time you have available to select and edit components. You now need to go through each tab selecting the building materials which are applicable to your scheme. You should select as many as possible as you can delete items later. Remember, you're trying to estimate waste, therefore focus on the components most likely to produce waste. Some components will match your specification closely, others may need editing to match your specification. Creating your own component from scratch requires you to enter detailed data on the component, including density and material composition. Editing an existing component is usually quicker and easier, so do this wherever you can. Let's add a few substructure components to this project so we have something to work with. You can edit components offline using the Download Upload Components function. From this pop-up box we can choose to download our components in an Excel spreadsheet. We will revisit this pop-up box again later to upload our revised component data. It's important to focus on the Component Properties section within the Download spreadsheet. This section contains the items you are most likely to need to edit. It is strongly recommended that you update the component description, quantity, and rate columns to suit your bill of quantities. The material percentage is calculated automatically and therefore will not require editing. You may also choose to change the dimensions if your bill of quantities describes these. Be very careful about changing any of the other cells in the spreadsheet. The detailed calculations within the tool rely on these figures, and you could inadvertently distort your results. For example, if you decide to change the unit of measurement, you should check carefully that the component rate, dimensions, and density are correct for the new unit. Let's take a look at this component. Let's say our cost plan includes a slab that's 400 mm thick and costs £150 per square metre. To reflect this, we can change the rate to £150 and also change the description to reflect the new thickness. This method of editing components will save you time compared with editing them online. We will cover the online method later. You must check that the row is valid before it is uploaded. The validity of each row of data is indicated in the spreadsheet. Once all edits have been made, you can upload the dataset back into the tool. You can add in any cost for recovery or take back options which you have agreed with the supplier or waste management contractor. You can also select if the waste is to be retained on site. We would recommend not editing the embodied carbon per unit column as this is pre-populated data. Anything selected here will appear in the waste segregation options covered elsewhere in the tool. Once you're happy with all your data, you can save it to your chosen file location and go back to the Download Upload pop-up. Click Browse and find the relevant file to upload to the tool. Then click OK and it will upload. This may take some time if you have a large amount of data. Therefore, it's best to have a good internet connection for this process. Any edits you've made should now be shown on this screen. Another function within the tool is to enter information about components using Site 1 materials. Doing so increases reuse and therefore reduces the amount of material going to landfill. Click here in the Site 1 materials column. This pop-up tells you whether any of the demolition or strip-out waste estimated during project setup might be suitable for use in the selected component. Simply enter the quantity of Site 1 materials you propose to use here. The last important feature of this screen that I need to explain is the online method for editing components. If you have several components to edit, you will find this method slower than the Excel download. If you've only one or two components to edit, or you'd like to make further edits after uploading your Excel file, you may find this method useful. First, you need to click on the View Edit link next to the component you want to edit and wait for the pop-up to load. The Add Edit Component pop-up allows you to change any of the data behind the component. On this tab, you can replace the existing component description, change the rate, unit, quantity, dimensions, density, and volume. You can also change the recycled content by clicking on this tab, or change wastage rates and material composition via this tab. Realistically, however, all you will usually need to edit is the component name, rate, and quantity. As with the Excel method, be careful with the edits you make. It's a good idea to review your changes to make sure your data makes sense, particularly if you've changed the unit of measurement or the material composition. When you've made your changes, click Save and Close and go back to the main screen. When you're happy that you've entered all the relevant components and edited them as required, this means you've finished adding your specification to the tool and can move on to analysing your project. Another important consideration is how you reflect the project value in your NetWaste tool project. The value of the components you enter should be close to the total project value you entered under Project Details. You can see on the project homepage here, for this example project, that the total construction value entered by the user is £23 million. You can also see that the component cost we've entered is significantly less. This cost relates to the components entered, including their material and labour value. The material cost, shown below, relates only to materials. Ideally, the construction cost and the component cost should be closer. The difference between these two figures can affect the accuracy of the tool's calculations. What we ought to do with this project is find out whether we've entered all the significant items in the bill of quantities, or if we need to reduce the construction cost. In this case, the disparity is because I've only entered substructure items so far. Let's explore some tips on working with a bill of quantities to create a NetWaste tool project. It's important to remember that some items within the bill of quantities will not produce waste and should be excluded from your analysis. Items like day works and contingencies, price and design reserves, profit, VAT and preliminaries do not create waste and therefore can be excluded. A useful approach is to make a note of excluded items in an exclusion list. You can then find the total value of the excluded items and deduct this amount from the construction value you enter into the NetWaste tool. You may also find some specifications that are not represented by any of the tool's component options. For example, a wooden stage or teaching boards in a school. You could create new components from scratch, however this would be time consuming. If these specifications are unlikely to create waste or increase the project's recycled content, it may be more sensible to add them to your exclusion list. Your goal is to get the most significant items from your bill into the net waste tool. By this I mean items that are significant in terms of cost and quantity of material and their potential contribution to waste or recycled content. Another tip I can give you is to group similar items into a single component, if doing so is unlikely to affect the calculation of waste or recycled content. Let's look at these reinforcement items as an example. Rather than entering these as separate components, it would be much easier to combine them into a single component with a quantity of 64 tonnes. The different densities of these items is unlikely to significantly affect their recycled content or their potential wastage. Their values are also similar, therefore an average value of say £900 per tonne could be used. You can also exclude items that you know for sure won't produce any waste. These metal formwork items, for example, will definitely be kept for reuse on other projects. As these are valuable and won't be wasted, they won't improve the accuracy of the tool's waste estimates, and we could choose not to include them in our project. If we were interested in recycled content, however, we might choose to include them, because all metal contains recycled content. Also, if these items were previously used on another project, we could consider them to contain 100% recycled content. That completes Module 2. We have covered how to enter your project specification by selecting from a list of components, how to edit multiple components to match your specification more closely, how to add Site 1 materials to a component, how to edit individual components online, and some tips for interpreting a bill of quantities and ensuring your project is accurate. Now that you've seen Module 2, you may wish to watch Module 3, which demonstrates how to analyse a project. The final module, Module number 4, demonstrates managing a project, including adding guest users, editing project details, and entering actual waste data.